director of Teaching Heart Institute, an organization dedicated to connecting the worlds of education and mental health and supporting teachers and parents in developing children's and teenagers' social and emotional intelligence. Along with doing presentations and workshops, Mr. McSheehy consults and does therapy with parents, families, teachers, and individuals. He is the author of the book, In Focus, Improving Social and Emotional Intelligence, One Day at a Time. At this time, I will turn it over to our guest speaker, Mr. McSheehy. We're so happy to have you tonight.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for that introduction. And I think, let's see if I have hopefully I have the control here. Well, thank you so much, parents from Lawrence County. I'm so sorry because of technology. I was ready to go at 10 minutes before, and that's the world of technology, but you get to watch me. You know, we all are kind of living in a stressful world, and I'll definitely get my message across. And I'm fortunate to come back and talk in May with you, actually next Thursday and a few times in May. So whatever I don't get to tonight, I'll be sure to cover. And I thank you for showing up, especially at this time. You know, I think it's such a stressful time in this world. And the best time to develop your child's social emotional intelligence is during stressful times. Tonight's going to be a little different than the other. You know, that description was my other presentation I did. It's been one of those days, I think, for everyone. But tonight I'm going to focus in on an extension of social emotional learning, which is dealing with emotions. And then I'm going to be talking about cell phones and gaming.
People can do it one time.
And one thing, if you can be conscious of, is if you can mute yourself, okay? Down in the lower left, there's a mute button. And if you can do that, thank you so much, everyone. So let me do my PowerPoint so I can jump into the visual part and show you. And then we'll get started. And I always come with more than I need. And tonight, because I'm starting a few minutes late, I'll be moving around. But tonight's going to be focused on learning how to deal with emotions in healthy ways. I want to review some of what I shared before for new people tonight. I did present, I think it was a month ago, or maybe longer. I want to review a little, which is good for whether you're new or you saw me last time. This will be helpful for everyone. SEL, or social emotional learning, is the ability to identify and manage feelings, the ability to control impulses or delay gratification, the ability to persevere when things get tough, the ability to communicate and relate effectively to others, the ability to express empathy towards others, and the ability to work cooperatively with others. And then finally, negotiate and resolve differences in a win-win manner. If you can do those things and develop those skills, you're going to go a long way in life and have successful relationships. I just want to tell you one study which highlights what I'm going to talk to tonight. Terry Moffat of Duke University and a group of other researchers studied 1,000 children for 32 years to find out what qualities were most important related to wealth, health, and public safety. So if you were thinking of what are the two most critical skills you could teach your child, here they are. 69 for a high temperature. Number one, the ability, I'm gonna pause for 1 second. If you can be aware that if your mute button, it's down in the lower left, and it should have a red slash through it, meaning you're muted, because there's somebody's isn't muted, and it will have you a little hard for everyone to hear. Okay.
Mr. McSheehy, just a note, since you have hosting duties, there's actually a mute all button.
Oh, okay.
Pull up the participants where you can do that.
Let me do that. Sorry. Let me go back. Sorry. Thank you so much. And let me see participants. And then controls, mute. Let's see. I do see horizon here with your Saturday evening plans. Okay, beautiful. Thank you for that tip. So back to the screen share. Sorry. So the ability to identify, feel, and manage emotion is critical. And the ability to control impulses or weight. So those two we're going to focus on tonight. These two skills at the top. And they're not easy, but part of my message you're going to hear tonight and in future weeks is about connection, which in this day and age is really tough. The speed of life, the amount of distractions we have in our lives, from computers to cell phones to stress, makes it really hard to connect. But this is a really important thing, and it might be challenging for many of us, if not all of us, is we learn how to feel or not feel from our parents, teachers, and coaches. We learn how to self-soothe in healthy ways or unhealthy ways from our parents, teachers, and coaches. And part of the challenge, and it is that many of you weren't raised in homes with the information about the brain we have now. And it's tough. The parents are learning on the job, but it's so key, and you're going to hear this message from me, is to be compassionate and really kind to yourself as you're trying to grow in this area. I'll be talking in a month about this act of attachment early in life. But what I want to say right now is this is where we start learning how to feel and self-soothe. And so much happens in this first year and a half of life to 3 years. And I'll be talking more in a month on this topic. And if it didn't go well for you as a parent or as a child, there's ways to repair that attachment. Often in the world of our, maybe in your home, definitely in my home, and in many homes today that are, dealing with enormous amounts of stress, that it's hard for parents to be present and really connect emotionally with the child. And being with a child and being emotionally connected is two different things. You can be with a child or with another adult, but not be very emotionally connected. And what kids care about on a deep level is, are you present? Are you with me? They need help managing their emotions, and they look to parents and teachers and coaches to help them. That's how our brains are wired or oriented towards. And so, as for me, as a youngest of 7 kids, my parents did a great job, and they did the best they could. But in the world of social emotional intelligence, they didn't have the information. What they were taught as kids is what they taught me, which was don't feel, don't show sadness, don't show hurt, stand up straight, avoid feeling. And again, we're learning differently now about what is good for mental health. And so for me, I felt quite lonely in my family. I felt all these big emotions and they overwhelmed me. And I learned unhealthy ways to deal with them. And I'll go over some of those. And I think we all did. Unless we have parents who can help us manage our emotions, we're going to find ways to cope. And some of those ways won't be healthy. When you look at this little girl, I just want you to notice, what do you think she's feeling? And this could be your child. And if you look at her eyes and her body posture, what emotion do you think she's feeling? And then go back to yourself, and what do you notice about yourself? What are you feeling when you look at her? Because this type of connection is what we want to build with kids and teenagers. And ultimately, this is the kind of connection we want to try to build where we're present. This mom is definitely present with her daughter, and it feels like she's just really there. And it's try to check out what you think that young girl's feeling. Again, look at her eyes, look at her body posture, where her hand is. It definitely, to me, looks like she's feeling scared, maybe, or sad. And her mom is just right there. It doesn't look like her mom's trying to change how she's feeling. She's trying to feel with her, which is what we want to do with kids. We want to teach them how to feel and not be overwhelmed by it, and how to self-soothe. And again, touch is nice, but it's not critical. You can feel very connected to someone else without touch. It's through the eyes are so important. And this is what I worry about. Because for many of you, maybe you grew up in homes where feeling emotions was a sign of weakness, and so if you felt overwhelmed or you were dealing with depression or anxiety, you kept it to yourself. I know I did. I was a very anxious kid, and as an adult, I grew to develop depression. And that, there's a shame that comes with that in society, and so you isolate, which is the worst thing to do for your brain and for mental health. And yet that's our coping mechanism. For many of us, we retreat and go away. And these days during the pandemic, we're set up to retreat, and this is not healthy. And another thing is coming to the world. Technology is a wonderful thing, and we're going to talk about how to use it, because if technology is leading your life and it's in control, that's going to lead to bad outcomes. Now, if you're using it as a tool, that's good. But so much of our time these days is pulled into the world of cell phones and computers. And we'll talk about why that is, because there's actually a way it affects our brain. It's a bit addictive in some ways. And also it's a way to escape feeling, that if you're overwhelmed, feeling anything, one of our coping mechanisms is to tune out and go away. There's a lot of ways to do that. We all have our own ways. But the more we can learn to feel and be present and connect with others, because we soothe ourselves through connection. Gaming has become really important. I'll talk about that tonight, because it is fun for kids, but it also has become this way the kids escape. And if we're leaving our body and escaping feeling, that's not a good thing. Now, if kids can be present and there's sort of limits set on it, or they set within themselves, then that's fine. It's like any activity. We'll come back to that. But ultimately, connection, we are wired and our brains want this type of connection. It's not always safe. If you grew up in a home where eye connection or emotional connection was uncomfortable, then maybe it is uncomfortable. And you have to be gentle with yourself and yet try to grow in this area. But we yearn for this. I know when adults ever took the time to really notice me and pay attention to how I'm feeling, it meant actually, as I think back on my life, the most important things in my life are those moments of kindness from my parents or adults or coaches or teachers, where they really stopped and paid attention to how I was feeling without an agenda to change me or fix me. They just tried to really help understand me. And ultimately, what we hope in life is, I think as a parent and as a child, we yearn for this connection, even though it's hard and not easy. Here's 6 ways to calm the brain and nervous system. And Dr. Thomas will be putting in a chat line at the end a link to get a page on how to do these. One of them is belly breathing. One of them is a heart meditation. One's mindfulness. Another strategy is noticing body sensations, using body pressure to calm the brain and nervous system, using progressive body relaxation. Those are the 6. And actually, I want to go back to the first one. I just want to, for a moment, talk about breathing, because it's a tool when you're overwhelmed as a parent or your child's overwhelmed. Breathing has a powerful effect on the nervous system and brain. And one of the ways I do it, I consciously put my hand on my heart and one on my stomach. And I got to take out my Kleenex. I have a bit of a scratchy nose for some reason. Hand on the heart, hand on my stomach. And there's a scientific reason for that. And maybe we'll talk about that at another time. But the idea is, as much as you can, is to breathe in through your nose for 3 to 4 to 5 seconds, and then exhale slowly, twice as long. So if you inhale for 3 seconds, exhale for 6 seconds. That strategy of breathing is going to slow down your nervous system. There's a bunch of different ways you can breathe, but that one will slow you down. So it might look like this. And so on your own, just take a couple of inhalations through your nose slowly. And then when you feel like you've taken a good breath, exhale it very slowly and longer. And just do that twice, okay? And we'll come back together in a second. Just take a moment to notice if it just shifted a little bit. It's very soothing if you do it for a few minutes. So I'm going to go through that. We know a lot about the brain, and really what I teach you tonight is not sort of a philosophy, but it's more based on what works in terms of the brain and the nervous system and how connection affects it. The future frontier, space is really fascinating to me, just like it is everyone, like going to Mars. But truly the cutting edge in science is the brain, and it will be, because so many of the challenges on nightly news is related to the brain and the inability for people to manage their emotions and calm themselves. Whether it's violence, whether it's racism, whether it's addictions, whether it's abuse, things like that, suicides, all have to do with the brain and mental health. I want to do a quick review of the brain because what I'm going to teach you in a few minutes is based on this, and I want you to see how you're affecting your brain and your child's brain. So this is how our brain develops from birth. Brainstem, which is like the reptilian part of the brain. Think of a reptile or T-Rex or lizard. It's our survival on a body level. Do we feel safe? And will we survive on a body level? And then the limbic system is our emotional center, where we feel emotions and get motivated and connect with human beings. It's what drives everything we do in this life. Without emotion, our life would be meaningless. And yet they're challenging. It's the dog brain or mammalian brain. And the frontal cortex is what you're working on with your child, right behind the front eyes. That's where they can feel overwhelmed and know they have to do something to calm themselves, like take a deep breath. And that develops over time, the frontal cortex. Not till your kids get into their 20s will that be fully developed. I wanted to tell you what these areas do. The brainstem is all about feeling safe and surviving. So obviously, a lot of kids' energy are going down to these areas right now. If we don't feel safe, part of our energy drops down in this area because our body wants to stay safe. The limbic system is all about emotions, motivation, connection. So anger, sadness, fear, love, joy. These are produced here. And again, these two areas are really important in our life right now during the pandemic. But we have to develop this part of the brain up here where we think and reflect and analyze, because those two lower areas can hijack our brain and cause us not be able to think. They just react. What are the languages? And this is a really important thing slide, because I'm going to come back to this and teach this to you during, if you're going to play games with your kids related to the computer or something. The brainstem talks to you through physical sensations, a racing heart, a tight stomach, pressure on your chest, goosebumps. That's the brainstem. Emotions and memories come from the limbic system. And finally, the cortex speaks to you through words and images. So if a child's stressed out, I'm going to kind of jump from this area and kind of move forwards, because you get the general sense of what's going on. I do want to highlight this picture right here in this day and age of where there seems to be so much judgment about any of us based on race or culture. This is the emotional center of the brain, the amygdala and hippocampus. For every human on this planet, it looks the same. So if you looked at mine or somebody from a different race or culture, you couldn't tell the difference between us, which is a beautiful thing. We're all wired the same emotionally, and we all need the same things as human beings. So I want to skip ahead a little bit and honor. I just want to reflect so much a basis, and I'm going to review this the next time because we have a little shorter time. I just want to ask you to pay attention to the 6 primary feelings. You're going to get an attachment at the end related to these, and you might post them on your refrigerator, on your bathroom mirror. And it takes practice to learn how to identify what you're feeling, because most of us were not taught to feel. But the only way you can manage emotions is be able to identify them. And the only way you're going to help your child identify their emotions and deal with them is if you can work on them with your child. And it can be something you work with them on. But they all are valuable. There are no bad emotions. people choose inappropriate ways to express them or even wrong ways. Like anger is a really healthy emotion when well used, but most cases in the news are people who aren't expressing their anger in healthy ways and choosing violence. But all these emotions here are meant to help us, give us information, and help us make good decisions as long as we're reflecting on them and dealing with them effectively. I want to skip over this because this is just kind of, some of this is information I'll come back to. I do want you to stop and reflect on this because, again, we tend to repeat what we learned as children unless you really change. We either do the same as our parents or the opposite. But there are great things your parents did and maybe things they didn't know about that you can improve on. But how did your parents respond to you when you're happy? And if nothing comes to you, then just maybe it'll come in another day or two, but to be curious. The brain loves when you're curious. And when you start judging yourself or your brain, it just shuts down. When you were sad, how did your parents respond? I know for me, my dad told me to shake it off. So it made him uncomfortable. How about scared? How did your parents respond to your fear? How did they respond with love? How about anger? When you were angry, how did they respond to you? And when you felt hurt, how did they respond? And again, developing your own awareness is going to help you connect with your child and coach them in this area. But you have to work with yourself and with them, with compassion for yourself. And I want to just show you this film clip because this speaks volumes before we get into gaming and talking, but I want to speak about how much our culture is teaching young boys and young girls certain beliefs about emotions, and they're powerful and they stay with us. I watch people on TV all the time start crying and they say, I'm so sorry. And yet they're being very honest and authentic and real. And it's quite touching, but they feel like they're supposed to apologize. That's a learned belief. But here's some things about what boys, and I grew up playing sports, and it taught me many good things, and it taught me some not so good things related to mental health.
You get to hurt them?
You get to kick ass.
Hey, you gotta play tough here. Tad, Rockwell, you gotta start smashing people, okay? Otherwise, they're gonna smash you, okay?
Men often tell boys that anger is a manly emotion, but feelings of vulnerability and fear are not.
Joey! Joey! You guys know what pass blocking is? Yeah? How come nobody did it?
I don't know.
Huh? You gotta go in there and you gotta be tough, but you can't be sissying out, all right?
Maybe that's what the coach's father taught him.
You gotta be tougher than they are. That's the bottom line.
And so it goes, from generation to generation.
What is it that makes a man a man?
Not crying over nothing. A man is somebody who's not a wuss and doesn't cry all the time. Tough, never cry, doesn't cry a lot.
On two.
You know when a 9-year-old boy says that boys shouldn't cry, he may suddenly remember that he himself cried twice that day already. And that raises a doubt which hangs over every boy's head. Am I man enough?
When I think of how I be a man when I grow up, and grow up like my big brother.
Are boys naturally tough and aggressive?
Well, in a month when I talk about attachment and connection with young and how to repair that, I'm going to show you the rest of that film clip that gets into babies. I do want to reflect just for a moment, again, those messages that we're teaching girls and boys. Boys are much more encouraged to be aggressive and share anger, that's okay. And girls are not allowed to show that, and so much of boys' sadness and hurt and fear gets channeled in anger. Girls often take all their emotions and turn it inward, and they usually use cutting or eating disorders or things to channel or push down their emotions that aren't honored in our society. I want to skip ahead and talk about gaming because it's such an important thing and a topic I wanted to get to tonight. I do want to talk about just some of the ways we cope before I talk about that. So I showed this slide last time, and this stress could happen in any home, but it's definitely an uncomfortable situation. Just you notice from the body posture of the man and the young girl, and when kids don't have the tools to cope, or it's too much for their nervous systems, they start trying to cope on their own, and they might choose ways that aren't healthy. If you have too much or too little sensations, emotions, and no connection with parents, because connection is how we regulate emotions and sensations and how we wire the front cortex so we know later in life how to deal with it. These are things kids do or adults do. And nothing's bad about these. We do the best we can with what we have as a child to cope. And as an adult, space out or leave the body. Not literally leave your body, but literally not be in your body. Shut down and withdraw if things are too much. Get busy and speed up. Self-medicate, which kind of is called soft addictions. It could be food, it could be alcohol, it could be a lot of things that we try to self-soothe with. To get very intellectual, to overthink things and not feel. And that is that when you go to the left side of your brain, that's where you think with, and you can spend a lot of your life there. The right side is where you feel with, the right side of your brain. And sometimes we can avoid that. You can get overly controlling where you want to manage life because you want to stay safe. And all of these mean well, but they're not always the healthiest strategies. There's a window of tolerance that we want to be in. That little yellow bar is kind of where our nervous system is, not too much and not too little. We're grounded, we're able to manage the emotions and stay in relationship. And this is what we're trying to train kids. But if they don't have any support around them or don't have the tools, whether to calm themselves and know how to take a walk around the block or play sports or consciously do something to deal with anxiety or fear or hurt, they're going to go into hyperarousal, right? High energy and anxiety and anger and overwhelm, very hyper vigilant, fight or flight, chaotic. A lot of kids who have nervous system issues are labeled ADD or ADHD, when in fact it's a nervous system. There's too much going on in their system to manage, and they've never gotten support in learning. Now, the opposite, you can go that way, which I did as a child a lot, but then I would flip-flop. You can jump between these two. Then you can drop into hyperarousal, which is you just shut down when things are too much and you numb out. You go into depression. You become passive, withdrawn. You freeze and you go into shame. And these are coping mechanisms. And even as an adult, maybe you use these, but the more we can work on dealing with our emotions effectively, we'll stay in that window of tolerance. I want to, again, skip forward and get into gaming. I think we got enough background knowledge. And I want to talk about this world of what dopamine is, by the way. This plays a key role in gaming and cell phones. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, a brain chemical that's connected to pleasure and reward. So it's really important. We need dopamine in our brain, but it sets us up to, and by the way, it's produced in the limbic system and brainstem. Those two parts of the brain I talked about earlier, the brainstem makes dopamine and feeds it to the limbic system. And that motivates you to want to do things. Sometimes it motivates you to want to do things that aren't good for you as a way to soothe yourself. And that's where addictions come in. So the world, every time you look at your cell phone, you get a bit of a hit of dopamine. And it actually is sort of feels pleasurable and you do it again. And if you're feeling disconnected and lonely, you'd rather connect to a phone than nobody, especially if you're a young kid and can't manage it. This is the loop, the dopamine reward loop. You pick up your cell phone, you get a little flash, you see the screen, and immediately your brain gives you a little hit of dopamine. You feel happy. And then all of a sudden the dopamine decreases. You need to go back and do it again, right? And dopamine's good, but if you overdo this and do too much stimulation of the dopamine loop, it starts wearing out the dopamine receptor sites. So you need more every time. It's sort of like what happens with cocaine or anything that it stops affecting and you need more and more. Well, that can happen just in pleasurable things in life. And the cycle of addiction is, again, we'll do this loop quickly, but you engage in actions that increase dopamine. You feel higher pleasure. When the dopamine wears off, you feel withdrawal or flat or depressed. So you re-engage in the dopamine producing behavior, even if it's bad for you. And with intense stimulation, the pleasure centers, by the way, the pleasure centers are in the limbic system or emotional center, right? They need more and more excitement in order to feel anything at all. So you're setting yourself up for this cycle. And this happens with gaming, with cell phones, with everything in life, really. And this can be a really good event for kids. And I know you're not going to make technology to go away and to ban it in your home or tell kids they're not doing it. You're going to set up for just a sense of conflict. Here's some tips. First of all, be conscious of it. Is this your world where you're living more? Because if we took away cell phones, what would happen? Well, the kids and parents would start talking or playing games or connecting. And down deep, our brains crave that more than cell phones, believe it or not. Cell phones is sort of like a cupcake. And when you eat an apple, it's much more nutritious. The cupcake is sweet and enticing, but not nutritious. I once played with this kid, meaning I did therapy with this young boy named Hayden, and his mom was in the room working with me. And he would, because he went through trauma as a young kid, a baby, he would disassociate. He would space out. So during our play therapy sessions, I would sense this feeling that kids will set you up to feel their world, by the way, and I'll talk more about that on another time, but kids will set you up to feel what they're feeling. So if you tune in your own body, you're going to pick up what they're feeling. So I started getting very spacey when I was working with and playing with Hayden, and his mom did too. And so in order to help him, and he loved playing video games, right? To a point where it was an addiction. That's how he coped with his trauma. He would literally leave his body and immerse himself in video games. And if you're leaving your body, it's not healthy. And if you're not conscious that you're leaving it. So I had him bring in his cell phone and bring in the video game, and we played and we would pause. I made an agreement, we'd play it, but if I needed a timeout because I was feeling overwhelmed and spacey, we'd take a timeout and we'd regulate. So by playing the game, and this is something you can do at home, that you could actually play the game with your kids, and it can be an agreement you make that sometimes you're going to play with them, or you're going to pause. You're going to be sort of that voice that takes a time out, that when you're feeling overwhelmed, that you take a time out, you go to your body and feel what sensations, you feel what emotions. So, oh my goodness, that guy's being killed on the screen. I'm having trouble breathing. That's your sensation. We need to take a time out. I'm feeling like my throat's getting tight. I'm feeling kind of scared. And I just need to take some deep breaths. By you doing that and voicing out loud, your child might say, why are you doing that? You can say, I'm trying to work on developing my brain and working with you. And part of my agreement with you is you can play these games, but once in a while I'm going to sit in and I'm going to do it. And if you want to play it with them, great. And do these pauses where you self-reflect on the three languages of the brain: the brainstem, sensations, the limbic system, emotions, and the frontal cortex, where you reflect and do a calming activity. Good calming activities are breathing, shaking your hands, rubbing your arms, getting up and standing, anything that gets you in touch with your body. And then go back and play. So you can use this game as a way for him or her, your daughter, to self-reflect and to grow consciously and feeling and sort of self-regulating through the game. Instead of banning the game, use it to build awareness and learning how to come back into the body. Now, you might do it if your child's been through trauma, and I'll be talking about trauma in May. You might do it in little bits where you take a moment of reflection and get them that, because when you reflect out loud, they naturally have to reflect on their bodies and their emotions. It's how our brains are. If I said out loud, my stomach's tight, you're going to compare your stomach to mine, and your brain will, And it will say, no, my stomach's not tight. So we're constantly, when someone says something out loud about the bodies, we self-reflect on our own bodies. And so it's a beautiful technique with kids and adolescents. And again, be upfront while you're doing it. I'm trying to get stronger brain, and I'm trying to space out less and be more in touch with my feelings. And this is sort of a way you could play with your child. This is what I did in therapy. Even though I was on one side, his mom was on the other, and we were looking at a cell phone. And I was really allowing myself to feel whatever was happening in the game. When I play with kids, I don't I don't say like, well, that's just pretend. I allow myself to feel it as if it's really happening. And that's a really powerful technique. And again, you don't want to do it all the time. You'll give your kids some space sometimes, right? But to say, part of my agreement, you can play these games, but I want to work with you and helping you learn to feel while you're doing the game. They might say, oh, mom or dad, and they say, well, we have to negotiate here and work this out, because they can also, you can talk. Older kids, I will show them a picture of the brain and talk to them about how easy it is to space out and how it can be addictive, a bit like a drug. And unless you develop these skills, you can easily space out in life, and it's not going to help you in your job or relationships. You got to be able to feel and be in your body. And so I tell them why. Kids want to know why. And then, it's important. And if you're going to do the game with them, again, stop and pause and go to the 3 languages of the brain and invite your child to. And if they don't want to, that's okay. Just reflect out loud. I'll come back to this slide next week. I want to wrap up with a few. One is, I will talk more about playing with kids, or your kids specifically, or your adolescents if it's more structured. But, so many times we lose these opportunities to connect with our kids. And I will teach you this technique I use in play therapy. But for now, to the next time we talk, which is actually next week, you can download the links at the end and just start trying to do 2 things when you look at the clock each day. Is just tune in to one of the 6 emotions and see if you can identify what you're feeling throughout the day. And maybe you're not sure, but just guess. And then notice what your body's feeling. So you're really trying to pay attention to the brainstem sensations. Do you have a tight stomach? Like mine's a little tight because I'm rushing a little bit with the technology issue. Just notice that. And then what are you feeling? It could be fear, it could be happiness, it could be a combination of things. And just notice, and then try to do a calming activity. So I'm giving you calming activities and the 6 emotions. And boy, if you could post those, and just when you look at the clock every once in a while during the day, to just start developing your curiosity of what you're feeling in your body and your emotions. That will, when I meet with you in next week and in May, we'll continue to build on this, and I'll talk more about how to use those skills that you're developing in yourself to connect with your child, because these moments are so rich right here. What's most important? Start talking about your feelings. Well, I'd start paying attention to your own. And then get curious talking out loud. Or you could talk to your child about, I don't even know what I'm feeling because I wasn't taught as a child, but I want to learn. To start trying to be vulnerable. And vulnerable might be saying, I'm not very good at feeling sadness or emotions, but I'm going to try. That's being authentic and honest with kids, and I respect that. The biggest thing you can be in life is be available, to listen deeply, to understand your child, not to fix them or make their emotions go away, because they only learn to feel by feeling, and then you helping them in relationship with you and learning to calm themselves. And calming might be taking a walk around the block, but to do it consciously. To pick moments of connection to feel in a car, playing a game and walking. And don't push. If your child doesn't want to talk, then just, you could talk, do moments of reflection out loud. Like if you're driving, saying, wow, I'm just noticing my heart's racing because we're late for getting to school, and I'm feeling a little nervous. So I'm just going to take some deep breaths. And they might say, why are you doing that? Again, just be honest while you're doing it. I'm trying to work on these skills, and I learned, and it's going to help me. We'll talk more about waiting challenges or games, because even playing a game with your child, not to pick up the phone, but waiting is such an important skill that's lost. Technology-free times, and do something fun instead. To have dinner twice a week or more together. And once in a while to pause a movie or TV show and reflect on those 3 languages. And again, not all the time, but say we're working on this, and this is my agreement, we're gonna watch this movie, but at least for a half hour, we're gonna pause it once in a while and just try to notice what we're feeling. Or if you're feeling like you're zoning out or going dead, just stop the show. Let me just see if, oops, sorry, I just did that slide. There's healthy and unhealthy in life for connection too. And if we didn't have what we need as a kid to self-regulate, we could easily choose unhealthy ways to cope. Same thing with food. The cupcake is a lot like a cell phone if a cell phone's not well used, or video games. It's enticing and quick, and you can eat one, you can maybe eat 6. You know, that's how I was as a kid with sugar. But obviously apples are much more nutritious for your body, and we have to start learning to choose this and coach our kids in how to choose it. Because gaming, if it's done too much, can be like a cupcake. And connection like this on the right side is definitely healthy for the brain, like an apple. What I would encourage in the next week, or to start thinking about this, is technology-free times each day and longer periods on the weekend. I would discuss the importance of limiting screen time with your child, make a plan together. Don't force it on them. Anytime any of us get things forced on us, we never know, but talk about why, negotiate with them, you know, work out a give and take. So it's something you do, maybe it's once a week, start small and build, but you want to build, and then you might get tools. First, try to trust them, but you might build in tools. Most things have limits that you can set limits on cell phones or on the computer so they can't be on it longer. Do something fun that's active and outside together. Create nourishing ways to connect while walking, playing catch, playing a game, reading. That's a good time to talk about feelings or to make a connection. Model feeling and expressing emotions and calm yourself in healthy ways. Again, speak the 3 languages of the brain out loud and do a self-calming activity. It's so important. And again, take baby steps. I would just start with identifying feelings this way and what your body's feeling. That would be huge, and do a self-calming activity. But again, for the future, play video games with your child, or watch, pause, and reflect with them. You know, to stop the video game in the middle and make an agreement to do it once or twice a week. Don't force it on them that every time, and do something fun. Whoops, I already said that. Now remember, you get dopamine in simple, healthy ways, and savor those. And what are the normal, healthy ways to get dopamine? Exercise, meditate, laugh, volunteer to help someone, a gratitude list, and simple pleasures like a walk in nature, holding hands, a good meal, a hug, or a meaningful conversation all give us small amounts of dopamine. Some things give us big surges of dopamine, like cell phones and things that aren't as healthy. That's going to sort of burn out our pleasure centers, meaning we'll need more and more. But these simple dopamine fix is what we want. And eat foods rich in dopamine: chicken, turkey, seafood, almonds, pumpkin and sesame seeds, turmeric, which is a spice, wonderful stuff, oregano, vegetables, olive oil, and green tea all give you dopamine. And I'm getting close to the end. I'm going to stop right there. I will finish up and pull some of these slides for the next time, but I do want to tell you about what we're coming up next week, because it's so important. And there is a list. I'll tell you several things. So next week is a tough topic, but it's a wonderful topic. It's going to be about hope. And I've been teamed up. It's been a blessing to me to meet Hayden Hurst and his mom, or to team up with their foundation. He's from the University of South, or played there, and he's grappled with depression and anxiety. And he tried to take his life 7 years ago, and he survived. And he's out of that. His foundation was born, and it's a very hopeful story. And I'm going to share that, and I talk about suicide, which is a very uncomfortable topic, but it's really important. And I promise that it'll bring hope next week. It'll be a hopeful topic, and it's one you want to come to next week. And I promise we'll find the light and the hope. But Hayden, again, plays for the Falcons now, the Atlanta Falcons, and I will be sharing his story, what he's learned, and other tips around preventing this and building mental health with kids, and things we didn't get to. There will be a few presentations in May, and I'll get to them then for sure. Mrs. Tom or Dr. Thomas is sharing some links in the chat line that you can download, and these could be your focus for the next week if you choose to. I hope tonight's helped you. I thank you for showing up and caring about your child, that you want to learn about mental health and social emotional learning. And I hope something I shared made a difference or will make a difference in your life. And I hope you come next week and in the future weeks. So until then, be well. Look for a way to connect with your child and really listen this week. If it's only one time, to really try hard to understand what they're feeling without an agenda to change them or fix them. Have a good night. And I'll stay on. If you want to type some questions to Dr. Thomas, I'm happy to stay on for a few minutes afterwards and answer a few if you want to put a few questions in the chat line. I'll stop the screen share and come back. So, are you there, Dr. Thomas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for another great session full of very relevant, informative, and helpful information. I have posted those links in the chat, so anyone here are able to get those from the chat. We can also email those out to all the participants as well. But thank you so much for this session that is very relevant for our students, our parents, and even our educators. So I do thank our parents as well for joining us tonight, as well as the educators who are here as well. As Mr. Mashihi said, please be on the lookout and hopefully you all will attend. We'll make sure we have our technology issues worked out, but attend our session next week on April the 22nd. Again, it will be another great session. We have another session that night as well with NAMI. It is for our Spanish speaking parents, but we'll make sure that we have those separate as well. But you know, if there are parents with any questions at this time, we can definitely take those, but we do thank Mr. McSheehy for this information and time.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Thomas, and thanks for hosting.
Absolutely.